Okay.
When I went on to YouTube on the desktop, it said that you and Donnie were still live.
Yeah. It's funny because it shows me so it shows both live things now.
Oh, do you want me to stop that one?
Yeah.
All right, let me do that real quick before we start.
Hello, anybody that's maybe in here right now. I also didn't have the live chat going when we were recording earlier, and I thought that we did. So I went back and was like looking at it, and I saw we had comments, and we weren't straight up weren't answering. So I felt pretty bad about that. Like there was a couple questions that literally were asking us for like fantasy advice. One of them was like, how can I find the link for the GoFundMe?
Duration 4 hours and 2 minutes.
All right. That's good.
1 sec.
Did you actually edit anything in the notes, or were you just looking at what they were? Because I got a thing that said
I was just looking. I might have accidentally tapped something, but I was just looking at them.
Riveting stuff for anybody that's in here right now. I know.
Yeah, sorry. I was doing something. Okay, I think we're good to go.
All right. All right. 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to Around the 412. We are part of allsteelers.com and proudly presented by Crowworthy, where winners are serving winners coast to coast with sports, gambling, fantasy, and more. You can follow Crowworthy at Crowworthy on Twitter, and you can visit us at crowworthy.com. You can also check out the Crowworthy Pittsburgh City page for podcasts just like this one, blogs, fantasy advice, and more. I'm Tyler, and with me as always is Smitty. How was your Wednesday, dude?
It's going good. It'd be going a lot better if we were still undefeated, but we're going to talk about that here in a little bit.
It's probably a lot better than your Monday.
Yeah. And my Tuesday. So we're gradually, because now we're getting closer. We've moved on. We're getting ready for Buffalo. But right. Yeah, Monday, Tuesday, pretty rough.
Well, hey, my whole weekend sucked. So, I mean, BYU lost on Saturday. No games to watch on Sunday, and then the Steelers lost on Monday. So, steady recovery.
Yeah, Cleveland beat Tennessee, which, could have some implications now with us taking that unexpected loss to Washington. But
I mean, not even just beat Tennessee. They killed Tennessee.
Yeah. But it is what it is. I'm also a little disappointed that our guy Ryan from Crowworthy isn't able to join us tonight like he was like we were hoping. But to kind of wrap up the Rockin' Around 412 that we've had going on, obviously those guys, being part of the network that we are part of, they're making a very generous donation. They wanted to come on here and kind of, like I said, wrap up the process and everything like that. Just a couple more days. You guys can still get involved up until December 12th. We're going to have the donation cutoff. But every single penny that you guys donate will go to these families, I promise. And every single prize that we have for this thing is going to be provided by us, or actually in the case of the James Conner jersey we have, donated by a listener of the show. So thank you for that. But 13 prizes and about 60 people so far have donated. And those are much better odds than I feel like you'll find anywhere else trying to win a prize, much better than the giveaways that we do where you're like one in a few thousand. So yeah, if you donate at least $20, you'll be eligible to win some great prizes such as the Jack Ham Pylon, the James Conner jersey I just mentioned, Minka Fitzpatrick autographed jersey, a Brian Rust autographed puck, Juju Smith-Schuster autographed football, a Chase Claypool autographed photo, Benny Snell autographed photo, a Kevin Newman jersey, some Joe Musgrove baseballs. Did I cover it all? I think I might have covered it all. Oh,
I
and
lose track.
Donnie is going to buy somebody an item from our brand new merch store. So I'm not wearing it now, but I probably should have because I knew I was going to bring that up. But anyways, 13 prizes again for those that donate at least $20. But any donations are obviously accepted and appreciated and are going to go directly to those families. Without further ado, I want to tell you guys about the best way to stuff those stockings this December, and that's going to be with some Manscaped products. So looking for the ultimate stocking stuffers for this holiday season? Look no further, because our sponsors, Manscaped, have the tools to make you win this year's stocking stuffer or white elephant competition. Manscaped is the only brand dedicated to below-the-waist grooming and hygiene products. Great news, they just released their products across Europe, Canada, and Australia. We have some of these great products obviously on hand all the time, me and Tyler. We use them on a pretty regular basis. And when I say pretty regular, I'm talking daily. Between the deodorant, the toner, the foot spray, it's all getting used pretty regularly. I wear the cologne on a regular basis. I have the body wash as well, which is also can be used for your hair. So I use their products on a daily basis. Tyler uses the products on a daily basis, and you can help one of the people that you love in your life use these products on a daily basis by stuffing some of this stuff in their stockings. So a few of these products that we can talk about, obviously the ball deodorant, the name speaks for itself. I don't need to explain what that is to you. The Crop Reviver ball toner is a spray-on toner that gives your balls the little slice of heaven with an aloe vera and hazel extract. The Crop Cleanser body wash is a full body wash that you can also use in your hair. Again, the ball wipes, which I didn't bring up yet. You never know when the opportunity is going to strike. You should always be prepared. The foot deodorant, designed to keep the stankiest feet smelling fresh. Tyler gives you a testimonial on that every single episode. So
It's true. My feet are rank, and I don't hide it, and it helps immensely.
The Weed Whacker nose and ear hair trimmer, which actually that's on me. I do not have, so I cannot give you a firsthand experience on what that's like, but they use that same skin safe technology that they use on the Lawnmower 3.0, so I'm sure it's fantastic. And that Lawnmower 3.0, which I just brought up, is a replaceable ceramic blade with advanced skin safe technology, which helps reduce grooming accidents. All these formulations are vegan, cruelty free, dye free, sulfate free. Their products are legit. You know you're getting the best stuff possible. Go to manscaped.com, use code 412 at checkout. You'll get 20% off plus free shipping. That's code 412 at checkout at manscaped.com for 20% off plus free shipping. Whether this is for your partner, dad, brother, friend, get them something they will actually use, and you'll get a laugh from it.
I forgot to do it. Here's the ball deodorant for those watching on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
There's the ball toner. Use it all the time. And
Yep.
you said that it's available in Australia now, so you might be able to say that they're helping guys down under, if you know what I mean.
True. That's pretty good. They should probably use that if they don't already. I'm not sure.
You can take it, Manscaped. Go ahead.
Okay, but let's talk about some Steelers football. We actually have a loss to talk about, unfortunately. But here's the thing: regardless of if they come out of this game 11-1 or 12-0, I feel like we could be having the same conversation. This loss was weeks in the making, where they weren't playing very good football, but they were still squeaking out W's each week. And finally, it comes back to bite them. Obviously, you can look at some key moments such as the 4th and goal, not getting any points down there, 4 straight stops on the 1 yard line for Washington. Obviously, the turnover at the end of the game. I mean, there's crucial points in this game, but I guess my point being is whether they would have won or lost this game, we'd be having a very similar conversation. It wasn't a pretty football game. And even if they were 12-0 right now, they weren't a flawless 12-0, but that's not the case. They were 11-1 and pretty banged up, and now we go to Buffalo for Sunday Night Football. I don't know how you're feeling after this game. It really doesn't change my opinion that just having that loss, that blemish on the record. What I'm really getting bummed out about is just the injuries continuing to pile up.
So things that I'm concerned about. The actual loss itself, not really. I mean, no one's going to go undefeated, I feel like, anymore. It's just not really.
Word to LJ Fort. He said that as well.
We talked about it the week before that even though we lost to a team that doesn't even have a name. We lost to an NFC East team. Yeah, it's the worst division, whatever. But we said the Washington football team is not as bad as they seem.
They're really good defense.
Their defense is really good, and I feel like Alex Smith does a good job managing that offense.
Better than turn it over.
Quarterbacks. So. Yeah, exactly. So I can't really be too upset about losing to the Washington football team. I mean, yeah, they're not a great team, but it is what it is. But I mean, just the offense continues to concern me. Play calling, run game, offensive line, that whole thing. And like you said, injuries. Those are my key takeaways. I mean, defense is still good. I'm still happy with Ben for the most part. It's just there's a lot of glaring areas that need fixing really quickly because playoffs are coming sooner than later.
Yeah, so I'll start on the defensive side of things because I feel like I'm going to be spending a lot more time talking about this offense. But look at the defensive side of things. They're still, great. They're the best in the league. But what worries me is, as I said, the injuries just continue to stack up. I would have never have thought that losing a guy like Robert Spillane for multiple weeks would be a key injury, but that's the point that we're at. I mean, he's, since stepping in for Devin Bush, obviously that's a key injury in itself, was losing Devin Bush. All of a sudden, Robert Spillane steps in. People might not have even known who this guy was the first time that this guy took the field for Devin Bush, but he's made a name for himself here. Very good at covering running backs, even, and tight ends out of the backfield. And I feel like that's an aspect that we are going to severely miss him in, because we saw what happened as soon as the Spillane injury happened. JD McKissick started to have a huge impact in this game for Washington. So they're definitely going to miss Spillane, but you look at like how many starters can this team lose before, we start to see the effects of it. And I feel like you kind of did start to see the effects of it in that second half against Washington. Also losing Joe Hayden to a concussion on a short week. I would be very surprised if he's able to go on Sunday night. Thankfully, Steven Nelson looks like he could come back. He got into full practice today. But now we're talking about, again, Hayden, Spillane, Bud Dupree, 3 starters in that defense lost over the last 2 games. Now we go to play a very good Buffalo football team in Sunday night at their place. I mean, it's a little bit worrisome for me on the defensive side of the football. Like I said, I don't think I need to spend too much time talking about it because it's not the performance that I'm worried about. It's the injuries continuing to stack up on that side of the football, and that's not the case for the offense.
Yeah, I can't quite remember who was taking most of the snaps whenever Spillane came out.
So it was a mix. For the first time, Avery Williamson did play over 50% of the snaps, but you saw a little bit more of Marcus Allen, and that's why I wanted to talk about is I think that obviously he'll get some more run on Sunday night. I also think that you could see more Antoine Brooks Jr. Kind of in the role that he played. What game was that where he played? Oh, Cincinnati. Against Cincinnati, he just like randomly popped up and played over 50% of the snaps. I wouldn't say that I expect that to happen, but I think he'll have an increased role. And then there's 2 guys that to me are kind of like wild cards in this game, just depending on how they want to use them. And that's Jordan Dangerfield and Sean Davis. 2 guys very familiar with the system that haven't had to play a lot of defensive snaps, but with how limited they are at linebacker now, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot of 3 safety looks, and that would involve one of those guys being on the field. So I'm interested to see what those guys are going to have. But yeah, Marcus Allen and Antoine Brooks Jr. would be the 2 guys to me that I definitely expect to see play more. Dangerfield and Sean Davis are kind of like wild cards that I would keep an eye on to potentially play more.
And Avery Williams as well.
Avery Williamson, I think, is definitely going to. I guess I'm talking about who are we going to see come in passing downs, because I don't think that he or Vince Williams, sorry to say it, I don't think that that's in their, that's not part of what they're able to do. They're not capable of defending the pass. And that's why we saw guys like Logan Thomas, JD McKissick do what they did in this game down the stretch.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that it's going to be a challenge for these guys, but I think if they can find a nice blend of being able to switch in and out of passing downs, run downs, because like you said, Williamson and Williams, they're not really passing down guys. We've seen Williams for years try to cover tight ends and wide receivers, and it hasn't worked. So I think if they could find a nice blend for that, at least until Spillane gets back, which sucks that he's out a few weeks. And it's not like our schedule gets easier as this season goes on. We're getting to a rough stretch here. But I think that the defense will be able to at least hold pat for the most part. We still got the front 7 for the most part that is able to get the pass rush going. I just hope Joe Hayden's back sooner than later, because he's arguably the best. After Minka, he's arguably the best in that secondary right now. So I hope it's not prolonged concussion.
I think, yeah, you're definitely going to need that pass rush to obviously they step up every single week. That's the strength of their defense. But I think that you got to look at Alex Highsmith potentially to take that next step immediately in this game against Buffalo because of the losses to these other guys. Because you know what TJ Watt's going to do. I think there was a little bit of question, I'm not sure why, as to what he would do without Bud Dupree on the opposite end of him. And he answered those questions by having a phenomenal game against Washington. You obviously have Cam Hayward and Stephon Tuitt in that middle there. It's going to be Alex Highsmith to me as the high factor along that front to make sure that he creates some pressure himself. Because they're going to have to. All four of those guys are going to have to create pressure because of what's behind them being a little bit limited right now. You know, there's been times where they were limited up front. They're pretty much healthy. Obviously, Tyson Alualu's been back. Stephon Tuitt came off the COVID list and played in this game against Washington. So, you know, obviously Sans Dupree, those guys, that has to be the strength of the football team starting this week against Buffalo, as they have been all season. But they really got to carry the workload now with Joe Hayden out, with Spillane out. I mean, they're just undermanned on that rest of that defense. So that front four is really going to have to tote the work in this game against Buffalo.
Yeah, you mentioned they play Buffalo. They're going to be thrown into the fire. They're leader of the AFC East. I mean, Buffalo's a really good team, and they're going to be tested right away how good this defense can be without these key players they're missing.
Yeah, obviously. I mean, you know, you got Josh Allen. I mean, we can talk about Buffalo a little bit and start to preview that game. You got Josh Allen, who's taken another step this year. You know, and Ben gave him high praise. He said he's playing at an MVP level right now. Stephon Diggs has been an amazing addition for them. I think, as we all kind of expected, he complements what Josh Allen needed better than anybody else I think they could have gotten. That short to intermediate route, one of the best route runners in football, but he can stretch the field as well. He's just what the doctor ordered for Josh Allen. They're going to be getting John Brown back potentially. He just missed the last couple of weeks. We'll see if he comes back. And then on defense, you know, they haven't been that great this year. That's been kind of surprising to me. I think they really got a good secondary. They got one of the best safety duos in football, and obviously also Tre'Davious White. That, to me, is what I'm really curious about once we flip to the other side of the football and start talking about the offensive issues and then previewing that side of it. That is going to be interesting to me, because who is Tre'Davious White going to try to eliminate? Is he going to stick on one guy or move him around? Because, you know, the last 2 weeks haven't been pretty for that receiver room, but we still know what the ceiling is there potentially. So I'm really curious as to what they do with Tre'Davious White in covering our receivers.
Yeah, the Steelers are, I feel like, even with the struggles the past couple of weeks and dropping the ball and everything, they still don't have a number one receiver. And like you mentioned, that ceiling is so high for all of them. So I feel like most teams would have a hard time covering the Steelers offensively, at least in the pass game still, because we've talked about it all year. There's no number one receiver. Each receiver on the team can be the number one receiver that week. So it makes it tough.
All right, so I think it's time to start talking a little bit about the offense. I don't know where to start. I mean, you could talk about the lack of the run game. You talked about the receivers / tight ends not being able to catch the ball. You talked about the play calling, the creativity or lack thereof in that area. I mean, I don't know where you want to start with it, but I want to let you go first because I feel like I'm going to spend a lot of time, might repeat myself a few times. So I'll let you go ahead and say your piece on the Steelers offense.
All right. Well, I want to start with the run game because running for 21 yards is absolutely pathetic. And I don't know if it's a combination of Randy Fichtner play calling, the running backs not being able to run the ball at all, or the offensive line not being able to run block at all, or it's just a combo of all three, but not being able to run the ball. And we said this a few weeks back. You asked me, do I think we need to be able to run the ball efficiently to win games? And I said no and yes, it just depends. And the yes was against good teams that have a good defense that are able to stop the Steelers offensively without having any run game. And Washington was able to expose that. And I think that not being able to run the ball just creates problems with the passing game because they don't need to stack the box whatsoever. I mean, Washington, they could have rushed 3 and they would have been fine. And I think it helps the defensive line for opposing teams be able to time up Ben better because you know that the run game is terrible. And I just think it's so frustrating to watch as it's not just one guy. It's not like the running back is doing terrible or the offensive line doing terrible. You can't point it out. It's just a culmination of everything going together, and it just looks garbage on the field. I mean, 21 yards rushing. That is pathetic.
It is. Okay, so we want to talk about the run game first. I was going to let you dictate whichever we want to first. Oh, I do want to say, I don't know who this is. Their YouTube name is literally Tifu. So I guess we can just refer to them as Tifu. We're doing great. Other than getting a little bit of frustration talking about what we're talking about right now, Steelers run game, Steelers offense in general. But we're doing great. Thanks for asking. Hope you're doing well. Thanks for stopping by. Okay, so the run game. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think that it would be fair to point the finger at one person for why this is struggling. It's not like, with James Conner, they were doing all that well. I think that he will be a nice addition back. I think he offers more than Benny Snell or Anthony McFarland Jr., so I'm excited to have him back against Buffalo. But it really doesn't mean much if up front we're not getting any type of push, which has been a huge contributor to why this team isn't able to run the ball. And I think Marquise Pouncey being gone as well is a factor too. Now, again, it's kind of in that same boat with Marquise Pouncey. It's not like they were running the ball incredibly effectively. So you try to break it down and figure out what exactly is wrong with it. I don't know that there is one certain thing. I think it's a combination of everything. I just don't think that the line is as good as people think that it is due to the fact that they're not giving up sacks. I don't think that that's an attribute to how good the line is. I think that that's an attribute is just to how quick Ben's getting the ball out of his hands. I really do not think that this line has been all that great this year. And I understand not giving up sacks is huge. Thank God it's keeping Ben healthy. It's keeping him upright. That's all great. But it's not like the line has played all that well, at least in my opinion. And when you're talking about run blocking, I think the one quick fix that you could do, and we've been talking about it for a while, is getting Kevin Dotson in the lineup somewhere. Now, I put out a poll to see where people would go with it, what they thought would be the best way to get him into the lineup, because I think everybody can get on board with putting him into the lineup. And they were saying left guard for Filer, and then Filer kicks out to right tackle, which would move Chooks out of the lineup. I think that that's a really tough call for me. Is it Chooks or Filer that comes out of the lineup? Regardless, I completely agree that Kevin Dotson needs to be on the field for the majority of snaps in the football game. I know they tried to use him a little bit down on the goal line, stuff like that. He needs to be the starting guard. He needs a starting position at one of those two guard spots. And obviously, a guy like David DeCastro isn't coming out of the lineup. As poor as he could play, and I do think that he has taken a step back this year, but I think it's mainly due to injury, not necessarily him falling off a cliff. I just don't see that to be the case. I think he's still dealing with the injury that held him out of the opener, to be honest with you. But anyway, so I think that Kevin Dotson would come in and immediately help them. I think that he'd be a much more effective pulling guard. Maybe that could be the case. Maybe it'd be a lot less pressure for DeCastro to move to the left side. I know that he's more comfortable on the right side. He's been doing it the whole time. But if Dotson, they normally use that right guard as the pulling guard. And if that's where Dotson needs to play to get the most out of this run game, I think that's what needs to happen. And another thing is, as much as we talked about fullbacks, and I'm not a huge fan of even, I don't think that you even necessarily have to have a fullback on the roster. But if you're going to have a fullback on the roster, when you're down at the 1 yard line 4 times, you talk about going into like I formation, which we brought up before. And I know that they actually, Derek Watt did whiff on a block on one of those downs.
Mm-hmm.
But what about just straight up handing the ball to him one time? He's closer to the line of scrimmage than the guy behind him and Benny Snell. What about literally letting Derek Watt get an attempt to run the ball on himself?
Or passing it to him on that 3rd down or 4th down or whatever it was.
I mean, listen, you got to get him involved some way with what you're paying him, right? I mean, you can't justify his contract putting him on the field for 4 snaps a game on offense. Obviously, he plays special teams as well. But with what you're paying him, I mean, he has to have some involvement.
Special teams players are not worth $3.4 million. He has to contribute in other areas, and so far he hasn't. Like you mentioned, he whiffed on that block on the goal line. If you cannot score from the 1 yard line 4 times in a row, that is absolutely pathetic. And another thing, what happened to the Matt Canada influence in this offense? I haven't been able to see it the past few weeks. I don't know what's wrong with that, because there's been no jet sweeps, been faking the jet sweeps, and I think that helped open up the offense a little bit. I mean, I looked, and Chase Claypool has not had to carry hasn't had a rush in 3 straight games. Ray McLeod hasn't had a rush in 2 straight games, and I think the offense is better and at its best when they're doing those sort of things. It helps out the run game when they do that. And I don't know if it's just Randy calling the plays this way, or Ben doesn't want to run that style of offense, but they were clearly better when they were doing that.
That's a really good point. Is we talked about Canada's influence on this offense and seeing how easy that it was to notice that his influence was there because of all the motion before the snap, because of them handing the ball off once in a while to a receiver on an end around with Chase Claypool and such. I that's a good point. Is I really I didn't wasn't picking up on that, but now that you bring it up, yeah, it seems like that element of the game just hasn't been there these last few weeks. And going back to that game against Baltimore, the first meeting actually, where Tony Romo was calling the game, and Chase Claypool's on the field, they send him in motion, and that completely takes some of Baltimore's defensive attention. You don't actually have to hand them the ball, but make it a possibility that you're going to make it look ugly. Literally just hand the ball to Connor and they score a touchdown on that play. That element of their offense just has not been there recently. And again, it's not about actually giving the ball to these guys. It's about making it seem like it's a possibility to give them the ball. Put something else in the defense's head, because right now, like Washington said and like Baltimore said, it's just way too predictable. They know what's going to happen before it happens. And I understand that every team watches tape, right? And you feel like you pick up on tendencies and stuff like that. But when your tendencies get to the point where defenses know what you're going to do, and you're not able to audible out of it, get out of it, and have some success doing it, I mean, that's when it gets to the point where the offense looks like it has the last couple weeks. So, yeah, I mean, absolutely to your point, I'm not sure exactly what's going on there, but Matt Canada's influence just doesn't seem to be on this offense right now, like we saw the first, I don't know, 9-10 weeks.
And believe me, one of the hardest things to cover as a defense in football is option of any kind on offense. And I don't know if you necessarily want to call that jet sweep an option, but in a way it is, because the defense has to be on its toes, whether he's going to hand it off to Claypool or whoever's running that jet sweep, if he's going to hand it off to the running back, or if Ben's just going to keep it and drop and do a play action. You don't know. And I think that just helps, like you said, keep the defense on their toes, because everything's been predictable so far. The passing has been short. I mean, why can we not just open the field up a little bit? Pass it beyond 10, 15 yards. It's so frustrating to see these guys just running these like little slants over the middle and getting like 4 or 5 yards on receptions. I mean, look at Juju. He had 7 receptions for 25 yards. That should not be a stat line.
Going back to the week before, the last 2 weeks combined, he has 15 for 65.
That's pathetic. He should have 7 for 65 or whatever it is. I mean, I think if you take the influence of Matt Canada, it just makes you a more dynamic offense. It makes the defense be unsteady. They don't know who's getting the ball necessarily. And I just think the play calling is better when you're running that style of offense. At least based off what we've been seeing this week, the play calling has been terrible. Week in and week out, it's the same exact thing. And yeah, they've been winning games. So maybe now that they actually lost a game, they can address that, because they can't just keep doing the same exact thing and expect to get the same result.
Someone in the comments just asked what we thought about Mr. Fichtner. Is he the main reason for the offense's predictable play? All right. So, I mean, I guess it's time for this part of the show, which I had planned. Absolutely, I think that Randy Fichtner is at the top of the blame chart for the Pittsburgh Steelers offensive woes right now. He lacks creativity, and it's not good. It's not a good system that he has in place. And here's what it comes down to for me. If Randy Fichtner were to be fired from his position as the Pittsburgh Steelers, is there any other team in the NFL that is going to give him any type of position and power of an offense? And I think the answer to that's no. I mean, there's a reason, and we'll get to like Tomlin here in a second, because I want to bring this up. But I think that there's a reason. Look at Tomlin's coaching tree. It's non-existent. Why is that the case? Why do we always have coordinators that are lifelong coordinators here? Because nobody else wants them. And why is that the case? Now, with Mike Tomlin, I love Mike Tomlin. I think he's the best coach, one of the best coaches, if not the best coach right now in the NFL. I think he gets, nobody gets more from less. Nobody's a better motivator of people. Nobody can manage a locker room better. But you got to put some blame on him, because this is his offensive coordinator. And going back to even before Randy Fichtner and Todd Haley, the last 10 years of Ben's career, potentially going to when Ben is going to retire, we have paired him up with a terrible offensive coordinator. You have wasted the prime of Ben Roethlisberger's career. That's long gone. Now we're just trying to squeeze something out of this back end of the window. Is it going to happen? No, because this guy's even worse than Todd Haley. Yes, I'm saying it. I would rather have Todd Haley right now. Todd Haley had his shortcomings for sure in the red zone. And I give Todd Haley a lot of credit for extending Ben's career, because, his offense emphasizes getting the ball out of his hands quick, and that's what we're still seeing now. And it's because nobody wants them. They're not good enough to have more power than what they're put in Pittsburgh. There's just too much trust in these guys. It's a ridiculous thing. I mean, I think it's just an organizational structure. And again, I think the Steelers are one of the best organizations in football. But there is no reason that a guy like Randy Fichtner should be in charge of an offense that has a future Hall of Famer in Ben Roethlisberger, 4 dynamic wide receivers, and an offensive line that has, potentially 2 Hall of Famers in Marquise Pouncey and David DeCastro, a dynamic tight end in Eric Ebron, who, really up until the last couple of weeks, we didn't know what Detroit and Indy was talking about with these drop issues. All of a sudden, those are coming to light, but that's neither here nor there. It's just ridiculous to me that a guy like Randy Fichtner is running this offense because, again, you're just wasting, at this point, Ben Roethlisberger's last few years with a guy like that.
Yeah, and one thing that I will agree with you, I think Todd Haley was a better coordinator than Randy Fichtner has been. And one thing that I love that Todd Haley was able to do, now granted, he did have Antonio Brown, but one thing that Todd Haley was able to do was open up the field. Passing down the field came simple to that offense. And maybe it's just because of the playmakers that they had, but I feel like with Randy Fichtner, the play calling, everything is short. And I understand that it's quick passes, but I feel like they should be able to get more than 2 seconds, let the guys get down the field more than 20 yards and open it up a little bit. I mean, you want to leave a defense on their toes. You have to be able to have that type of game. If everything is in front of you, it's very easy for the defense to just sit back and watch and then come down on you. It's so easy for that.
And most of the time, I don't want to cut you off, but I just want to say this before. I just want to say too, on most downs, and we see it, first down, there's a lot of time where they're throwing the ball behind the sticks. You're really putting yourself in a tough position there. When you're an offense that is only going to throw the ball 4 or 5 yards past the line of scrimmage, you can't put yourself behind the 8 ball like that on first down and throw a screen that's going nowhere. If you could run a screen effectively, maybe you could, but they ran 7 screen plays against Washington. Only 1 went for more than 7 yards. Other than that, they're getting tackled at either the line of scrimmage or behind the line of scrimmage, and then you're behind the 8 ball for the rest of the down. And this offense isn't, obviously, as we can see week in and week out, isn't built to play from behind the 8 ball on these downs. You got to be able to pick up some chunks of yards on first down, because they're not going to pick up many 3rd and longs.
And we've said for weeks that Juju has been the guy that Ben has been going to get those tough yards, but you can't expect him to get the tough yards when he catches the ball 4 to 5 yards from the line to gain, and you have to expect him to try to get those yards while he's dragging 2 or 3 guys with him. You can't do that. You have to throw beyond the line, and I don't get why they want to throw everything underneath. It is so frustrating. And another thing, it's one thing if the defense is predicting the plays and the play calling is so predictable, they know what it is. But the fans, we know exactly what's coming every single week. What down it is. Like, if you are running out of a shotgun on 2nd and 12, you might as well just punt on 2nd down. There's no reason for that, especially with the run game that the Steelers have right now. It is terrible. And if your play calling is like that, why aren't you passing on that down or any down? Like, I don't even know what to say. It's just so frustrating. It's so easy to predict.
So I actually got a message this week from somebody that actually works very closely, I'll just say it like that, with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And he said that there is a bad relationship between the offensive line and Randy Fichtner because they feel like there's not trust in them to be able to block for more than 2 seconds, and they take it personally with some of these play calls. Now, whether that be true or not, I'm not sure, but I will say that this person has given me some knowledge before that has turned out to be true. So I'm not sure. I'm not saying there's a broken relationship between the offensive coordinator and offensive line in Pittsburgh, but I will say that I could see that being the case. If you don't trust these guys to be able to pass block for more than 2 seconds, how are they supposed to take it? Again, there's 2 guys on this offensive line that are going to be in the Hall of Fame potentially in David DeCastro and Marquise Pouncey, Alejandro Villanueva, who's a multi-time Pro Bowler. I mean, there's a lot of guys on this offensive line that are very prideful, and when you're not letting them do their job the way that they've done their job for most of their careers, how else are they supposed to take it?
He has no reason for trusting them because they've shown no reason for him to have trust in them when it comes to running. But when it comes to passing, let them have time to be able to make a pocket for Ben and let him see the play develop. That's the thing. No plays can develop. I mean, I guess they develop if they're only supposed to go 5 yards in the first place. But the best Ben that we've seen is when plays develop and he's able to make plays on his own that weren't necessarily designed for that specific play. That is the best Ben that we could see. And he's not able to do that with this 2 second passing.
Yeah, and to put some blame on Ben as opposed to Fiechner here, we know that Ben has the ability to go up to the line of scrimmage and change the call, right? I mean, he could do that whenever he wants. So why isn't he more?
He
You
also
know,
has the authority too. I
yeah,
mean, for how long he's been the quarterback, he can just say screw whatever he says.
yeah. So I mean, I don't think that he's completely absolved from blame in that aspect. But still, what it comes down to is this is a very vanilla offense, and I don't think that they're just not able to do that right now. They got to get more creative in some way. I think that I don't know where it starts. What do you think needs to happen first? Like, and this might be rhetorical, but you can answer if you want. What needs to happen first? Do they need to establish some type of run game? Do they need to be able to stretch the field first to open up the run game and maybe move some guys out of the box? I don't know what the answer is, but it's just collectively, it's obviously not as bad as like the 2019 offense, but it's just when you have one thing going wrong, then defenses start to steam around that. And that's when you start to have the results that we're seeing these past few weeks from the Steelers offense. An offense that has, at one point averaging over 30 points per game, fourth in the NFL. We've seen that number decrease now the last 2 weeks. And I don't think it's getting any easier against Buffalo on Sunday night.
Honestly, the first thing that I would do to help try to fix this offense, or at least test the waters out, is go back to what you were doing earlier in the season. I would try to import some of that Matt Canada influence back into this offense. Now, maybe that doesn't help, but I think it's worth trying because your offense looked better whenever you're doing that. And I think if that potentially could help, it could help open up the passing game and help the running game as well, just because you're not as predictable.
Yeah, I did see we just got a couple questions in here, or at least one that just popped in. The Castro is absolutely playing with an injury. Should they put in Dotson and let the Castro heal up for the postseason? I mean, so my answer would be if he's hurt, and I think that he is as well. And I've said that absolutely. The problem there is it's a guy like David DeCastro, who I have said this multiple times on here, is probably a future Hall of Famer. If not, he at least has a case to be there. And you're not going to take a guy like that out of the lineup, or at least he's not going to come out of the lineup. He kind of, with the presence he has in the Steelers organization, I don't see that as a possibility. If he can play, he's going to play. So that's why the only real possibility I see here is Kevin Dotson replacing Matt Filer at left guard. And then the only question would be, even though Filer's coming out there, does he come in at right tackle, or do you stick with Chooks Okorafor at right tackle? To me, that would be the only possible lineup switch that we see. And I'm not even sure if that's entering the Steelers' mind. We're talking about it as fans, but is the Steelers organization as a whole, are they even like looking at this as a possibility, or is it just fans talking?
I hope so, because like you said, it's just fans talking, but we've got the eye test and we've seen Dotson play, and when he's been a dog, and they need that right now. They need someone to just be a dog on that offensive line and just run it up. So no matter who comes out, whether it is Chooks or Filer, Dotson definitely needs to be in. And that's just coming from a fan, not the team.
And then we got another question. Do you think Dupree's injury will allow us to resign him next year? I would still say no to that. But here's the thing that a lot of people aren't talking about. Everybody will throw out the it's more of a possibility now because there's the injury. Maybe he just wants to take a 1-year contract and then get back into free agency next year. The other thing that I'll add to that exact same sentiment is the fact that obviously with lack of fans, and in some places no fans, league revenue being down, how many people are going to be dishing out huge contracts this year? Even without the fact that he's coming off injury, he might be better just taking a 1-year deal and letting it reset the following year, because there's going to be a lot more money involved, hopefully, getting fans back in the stadiums in 2021 for 2022. So would he benefit more by taking another 1-year deal in Pittsburgh and then really trying to cash out in 2022, where teams are making a lot more money and maybe handing out bigger deals?
Yeah, I actually hadn't thought about that. There is a lot of risk with that. Look at this year, but there is a lot of reward if he's able to get that big term deal. And how does this affect? Say that happens. Do you think a 1-year deal with a guy like Bud would affect a signing like Juju?
Yeah, I think so. For that same reason, probably, is because it's not like the Steelers aren't going to have their revenue go down. They are. It's going to be everybody across the board. And I'm still not saying it's going to happen with a 1-year deal with Bud Dupree. It's just something that entered my mind, is the fact that a lot of people want to talk about, should you just take a 1-year deal to try to show that he's back from injury, yada yada yada. Maybe another team doesn't want to take the chance. I'm looking at it from the revenue standpoint first and foremost, because this isn't just the NFL. This is all leagues. As we're seeing in the NHL, not a whole lot of deals going through. The MLB, everybody that signed a free agent deal is pretty much 1 or 2 years. So this is across all sports leagues. Teams and players just aren't committing to long-term deals right now, and I think that you could see that be the case in this NFL free agency class, and that's why the door still is open for a guy like Bud Dupree, I think, to come back on a 1 year deal. Not so much because of the injury, but just because of the state of the league financially because of the pandemic.
Now, to stay on contracts talks, but to switch gears over to Juju, I'm curious what you think. Do you think that his play this year, where we've talked about how reliable this guy is, how the team loves him, how he's the new Hines Ward, and obviously that should earn him a contract on this team. But do you think that the stats and whatever he's getting this year, and it is down, but it's not all necessarily his fault? Do you think that will affect the money that he would or is going to get from the Steelers? Do you think it will be cheaper just because he's not putting up the big numbers he had in his rookie and sophomore seasons? Or do you think they'll look at the type of player he is, how reliable he is, what his leadership on this team is, and they'll still give him what they would have if they had those numbers still?
Well, I think it's still going to be the case where, again, I'm thinking I don't know how many teams are going to be handing out backing up the branch for anybody this year. And for a guy like Juju, I think that the Steelers probably wouldn't negotiate with him like that, just looking solely at his stats because they know the situation. There's 3 other guys in that receiver room taking away targets as well as a tight end. But to the outside, for a team that's trying to negotiate him and bring them somewhere else, they're absolutely going to be looking at that, trying to get him cheaper than what his value is. They're going to look at it and say, yeah, look at this drop off here. And that was with Ben back. So I think that other teams would probably try to negotiate with him and try to get him for cheaper, but I don't think that the Steelers would because, again, they know the situation. They obviously respect the other talent in that room, and they know that he is a key cog to that piece in that receiver room. You talked about it already, but like how everybody in the organization views him. So I don't think that the Steelers would try to lowball him, but I could see another team trying to lowball him because they're just going based off the stat sheet.
Yeah, and clearly, whenever they go to give Juju a contract, they should look at the plays and be like, why were we calling those plays? And then they could fire Randy Fichtner. It's easy. Juju's contract is going to get him fired.
Yeah, and for people that are going to say like the Steelers are having way too good of a year to fire, any offensive coordinator, the last year that Todd Haley was here, we were 13-3. He was not brought, but he didn't have his contract extended after we went 13-3 that year. So I think that the door is absolutely open. But the question is, will they do that because of him being Ben's buddy? A couple more comments in here. Zach Yates said hi, Beefy. So that's not really a question, but he said hi.
What up, Zach?
Do you think Juju would take a hometown discount? I've gone back and forth with this. I feel like we all have on this show. I mean, you could go back to, the draft when we took Claypool and started having this conversation. I definitely think that he could. Absolutely, he could. I've gone from thinking he was gone to, because he would go to a bigger market himself better than he can in Pittsburgh and be able to worry about his brand off the field as well as what he wants to do on the field and everything. I just continue to think that the chances of bringing Juju back they just keep increasing.
I do as well. Watching him this year, I mean, as soon as I made the connection and we made the connection to him being similar to Hines Ward, I feel like there's no way this dude's leaving.
Why do I feel like I'm not trying to say that we're a big part of this, but why do I feel like I see that comparison all the time now since we've made it on here?
Listen, I will say you and I were the first ones that I heard or remembered talking about that comparison. And then I felt like a week or two later, I saw it on Twitter. And I'm like, dude, give me half the revenue. Like,
hey, we got the clip of it. So
my answer to that question would be, it depends on what you're looking at his hometown discount as. Because I mean, what's he going to get? Because I have no idea what the market will be for him. So I guess depending on how you compare the contracts to other players, it might seem like a hometown discount, but it could turn out to be a really fair deal. I just have no idea what he's going to get, because I feel like over the course of his career and going up to this contract, he's just had such like highs and lows and in betweens, and it's just a weird way to determine what value to put on Juju. So I have no idea how to answer that question.
I don't know if you've seen this too, but have you ever seen like it seems like there's this weird perception with some people that the guy that mainly plays in the slot is like a number three wide receiver, and I have no idea why people think that. Like it's literally it's a starting position on the offense is your slot receiver. Like that's primarily where we see a guy like Cooper Kupp line up. Obviously Chris Godwin, who's one of the best at doing it. Devontae Adams sometimes will line up in the slot. It's literally just a position where the guys are lining up. It doesn't mean that they're the third wide receiver on the team.
No, I mean it's just your strengths as a wide receiver. I mean, just because you're in the slot does not make you terrible. I mean, obviously you're not terrible in the NFL, but it does not make you the third wide receiver. But I mean, when it comes to the Steelers, really, who is the third wide receiver? It just depends week to week, honestly.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that because for some reason I see that thrown out there every once in a while.
Also, another guy, and this just goes to the Bills game a little bit, and we might preview that in a second. But I just wanted to look. I was looking up the stats for it. Cole Beasley has been having a really good year, and he's another slot guy.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he's been productive going back to Dallas, but yeah, definitely this year in Buffalo.
Yeah.
That goes back to, the ascension of Josh Allen, I think, too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I expected him to be as good as I thought he was going to be that he has been for Buffalo.
Cole Beasley or Josh Allen?
Cole Beasley.
Okay.
I mean, Josh Allen, too. I mean, he was a big question mark coming out of the draft a few years ago. But Cole Beasley, when he went to Buffalo, I didn't know that he's basically the number one or number two after Diggs, excuse me. So I wasn't sure that was going to be the case, but he's been really good out of the slot as well. Slot receivers deserve respect.
How many more years does Ben have? Do you think this is our only window for a Super Bowl in the foreseeable? Do you think this year is the only year for a window for the Super Bowl for this foreseeable future?
Can I start?
Yeah.
All right. So when it comes to Ben, I think really the ball is in his court for whenever he wants to retire. It's either going to be his choice or it's going to be a hit or something or an injury that causes him to retire. So if I'm the Steelers, he has one more year on his contract. I would give him an extension either year by year, or I'd just give him like a 2-year extension at the end of this year just to add on to this one. So I would say realistically, Ben has at least 2 years left, if not like maybe 3 or so. And I do not think that this is the only year for a Super Bowl contender. I think that this team is set up defensively and offensively, if they can figure some things out, to be able to be good for a few years. And a lot of that does rely on Ben, but I think that they have put themselves in a position that they can be good for a couple years and be a Super Bowl contenders for a couple years. Now they do need to get some help in certain areas. They need to look into the draft. I mean, I feel like they need to address the offensive line. That's a glaring problem, but yeah, I think they're going to be a Super Bowl contender for at least the next like 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, going back to Ben's contract, I agree. I don't think next year can be the last year because I would love to be able to lower that cap hit next year at $40 million as it stands. I think they need to add at least 1 year to that to be able to rework that deal and get some money to play with to give a guy like Juju a new deal. Again, we could talk about Bud, but I really don't see that happening. To your point about being, in contention for a few years, though, I agree. And what I'll look at now, and I'm not saying, the start of the year to the start of the year, but the start of like the defense that we're seeing right now, you would think that this defense is going to be even better by the time that next year rolls around at the beginning of it, because you have Devin Bush coming back. Obviously, Alex Highsmith will have a full off season, and then, the start of the season to get going. But the big thing there is obviously Devin Bush coming back. Is going to be a huge addition to the defense. And, even a guy like Robert Spillane, we'll see what ends up happening at other middle linebacker position. Could we see Robert Spillane maybe overtake a guy like Vince Williams to go next to Devin Bush? I don't know. I mean, I'll throw that out there that it's a possibility. In the cornerback room, I'm curious about that because they might have to make a decision between Cam Sutton and Mike Hilton. I would love to be able to retain both those guys, but is that a realistic possibility? And we've already all the fans will agree with us in that area, but it's neither here nor there. But my point there being, they're still to be very good on defense for years. They're set up to do that, and you would think that the defense to start next year is going to be better than the defense that they got to finish this year up with, just because of the injuries.
Yeah, exactly.
So if they win the Super Bowl this year with his defense right now, you think it's absolutely in the realm of possibility for them to get right back there next year having the same defense with the addition of a guy like Devin Bush back into it.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that it's been, I don't know how long, 7 or 8 weeks since we've had Bush in the lineup.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not that I don't want to say I haven't missed him, because obviously we have, but it's been nice that it hasn't been such a glaring absence, with the addition of Robert Spillane and company doing such a nice job over these past like 7 or 8 weeks, whatever it's been. Um, because I mean, that was a big concern of how these guys were going to perform, stepping up into their roles, and I think they've done a good job of that.
Absolutely. There was some stuff that I missed here that I wanted to bring up. So Cassius Marsh, who the Steelers added off the Colts practice squad.
Dude, he's tatted.
Yeah, I was going to bring him up anyway, but somebody said thoughts on Cassius Marsh signing, and what role do you see him playing on this defense, assuming that he's promoted to the 53 after this week? Apparently they're going to use him as an outside linebacker. I was curious about that. He's mainly played along the D line for most of his career, but they're going to use him as an outside linebacker. I don't think he'll offer much in the coverage department. I don't think you'll see him drop in coverage very much. I just think he'll kind of see like a situational guy. Maybe he just primarily plays special teams. That's what we were talking about. They needed to add because we saw Alex Highsmith play 80% of the snaps, which was phenomenal, to see right away. But you're going to need to alleviate some of that, special teams work from him. Obviously, Ola's going to play sparingly as well. J-Ron Elliott potentially as well. But you need to add another, depth piece to rotate in, give TJ some time off potentially as well down the stretch here, and get after the passer, for 5 snaps a game, something like that on defense, and also be able to play special teams. So that's kind of the role that I see him having. First and foremost, should he even be part of the 53-man roster?
Yeah, I think it's just a depth move. I don't think they expect a ton from this guy. It's just a little more security on that defense in case someone else goes down. Knock on wood. We really don't want that to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And he did have, a couple pretty good seasons. He had a 5.5 sack year in San Fran just back in 2018, which that's not too far removed from that. So I think that he's a capable guy. He's obviously a well-traveled guy. But again, it's just a depth piece for this team, and it's hard to disagree with any type of move like that. If Joe Hayden can't go, how do you think the Steelers secondary is moved around? So obviously this would be assuming that Steven Nelson's able to come back and getting in a full practice today is pretty encouraging for that to happen. We saw Cam Sutton play 100% of the snaps on Monday. And I'm not sure if anybody expected that to happen or if anybody noticed that happen, but it was literally him and Minkah Fitzpatrick, only 2 players on defense that played 100% of the snaps. So he's going to play a ton. Now, whether it's just opposite of Steven Nelson as the other guy on the boundary, I'm not sure about. Again, this is just my personal opinion of it. I wouldn't have him do that because I just like the way that they use him moving around, kind of like a dime backer. They use him as a third safety, obviously play a little bit outside, maybe a little bit inside, just depending on how, the Bills decide to line up their guys. Mike Hilton's obviously going to be in the slot, and they're going to send him on blitzes here and there. And when I say here and there, it's probably going to be at a pretty regular pace because that's how they like to use him. And he's very good at it. To me, the wild card, and I've mentioned this for a couple of weeks now, is going to be Justin Lane on the other side. Because again, if I want to move Cam Sutton around, you got to have another guy in that opposite boundary when Cam Sutton is not playing there. And it's going to be Justin Lane, the guy opposite of a guy like Steven Nelson, assuming Steven Nelson can go. So I think I'm not sure if that's what will happen. I think that you will see primarily Cam Sutton on the boundary. But just for my personal preference, I would say I would love it if they just had Steven Nelson, obviously always playing outside. He's going to have to play close to 100% of the snaps, in my opinion. Mike Hilton, pretty much, doing his same thing that he always does. So for me, the only 2 that would be in question are what's Cam Sutton going to do in this game and what's Justin Lane's role going to be.
Sounds good to me. I don't know really what I can add to that, but I agree with you. I think Cam Sutton's too good to not have on the field. So whether he is going to be on that outside or in the slot or just being a rover player, just keep him out there.
Okay, so I think I'm caught up on questions there. So obviously we know Connor is going to be back for this game. He just came off the COVID list today. We'll see about Pouncey as well. Maybe he's activated later in the week. But we don't know that for sure, so I guess we should assume that. But do you think those 2 moves, how much does that give you confidence that we're able to, along with Tomlin's statements and stuff like that, give you some type of confidence that we will be able to establish a little bit more of a running game on Sunday night?
I mean, we mentioned before, we don't know how, like, Pouncey wasn't being amazing when he was in there as it is.
He's
So
definitely an upgrade, though.
it's definitely an upgrade. And Connor, I think what you get out of him compared to Benny Snell and Anthony McFarland is that I feel like, has a little bit more of the, I'll use like magic to make something out of nothing, and he can be, yeah, you're pointing to your eyes. He's
I think
able
he has
to
better
see,
vision. I think it's
yeah,
what
exactly. And I think that even though the blocking is suspect a lot of the time, he's able to make more out of it because he has that vision. And he, like we said, he's a kind of a combination of both those guys a little bit, where he can be that power back and he can be a little more shifty and run to the outside. I mean, running to the outside these past couple of weeks has been just, I was about to swear. I mean, it's been terrible. So I feel like Connor is going to be able to add that a little bit more. But I honestly, I don't expect much from the running game until I actually see it.
Yeah, and I can't disagree with that. I think to your point, and what I was trying to say with pointing to my eyes there is I think that what he offers is better vision than both those guys. So there might not be a huge hole that's open, but if there is one, he's going to be able to make the most out of it compared to the other two. So he might only gain a yard or two, but he's not going back a yard or two like we would see the other two guys do. So he'll work with what he has, what he's given, and I think that he's much better vision than the other two guys, and for that reason, if there's anything possible worth taking, he's going to take it.
Yeah.
I think, Benny Snell, we talk about it all the time. He kind of is what he is. I don't see him as much more than a power back or, a short yardage guy, a goal line back potentially, even though that didn't work out obviously on Monday. I just, man, when he gets out in space, it looks like he has cinder blocks tied to his feet. Like he doesn't move. He has no acceleration. There's no burst, which we thought was going to change because he dropped the weight and everything like that. Looked really good, in training camp and even to start the season, that game against the Giants. But it's just, I don't know if it's just like the season wearing him down or what. It's not like he's had an incredibly long, large workload or anything like that. But yeah, there's just nothing there in terms of what he can do in the open space.
Yeah, it's terrible. And even as a power back, I want to ask you, who do you think runs the ball harder, him or Connor? Because honestly, I feel like a lot of the time it's Connor.
I think it's two different. So I think it's like with Benny Snell, it's just more like naturally powerful. With James Conner, I think it's like pissed off running.
Yeah, well, that's one thing that you're going to get out of James Conner, whether he gets a yard or not, is that he is going to be the hardest working person on the field for that play, and that's just the attitude that he has.
Yeah. Do you think the Steelers were using Benny in situations where McFarland should have came in the Washington game? That's not something that I can say for certain one way or the other off the top of my head. I will say, going back to the week before, I don't know why we got away from using McFarland completely after he had that, one nice 17-yard reception. We know that McFarland isn't a traditional running back, but we know the skill set that he has as well. And that's on coaching to get the most out of that. You got to maximize these guys' skill sets. And what they're doing right now is not, if you're going to line up Benny Snell and run him from shotgun, that's not utilizing him the best way that you can. If you're going to have Anthony McFarland try to run between the tackles, that's not utilizing him the best way that you can. If you're going to line up Anthony McFarland on a fourth down play and try to throw the ball deep to him, that's not utilizing him the best way that you can, at least not right now. He has 5 catches on the year and they're all coming out of the backfield. He's not used to lining up like that and going and trying to get that ball. So with his usage right now, it's really, it's bad, and it's completely on the coaching. I don't think it's a matter of him really not making the most of his opportunity. I just think he's not being put in spots to succeed.
And it'd be one thing if Snell, say for example, for this game, like out carried him by like 10, 12, 15 carries. I mean, Snell only had 4 more carries. It was 8-4. So maybe there were opportunities that were missed that McFarland should have been out there. But if there weren't that many of them because they just weren't running the ball this game.
Yeah. Yeah, no running back was on the field. I think Snell was on the field for the most, and I think he had like 44% of the snaps he played.
Yeah, and I like, as much as I love seeing a good passing game, and Ben still has been very solid for this offense. throwing the ball 53 times or 50 times a game is not good for your offense.
For a 38-year-old coming off of elbow surgery.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't even thinking about that aspect. I was just thinking about
Yeah.
your offense in terms of like going against defenses. But yeah, that's another point. Do you really want to stretch this guy's elbow out that much every single week? It's not a good way to set yourself up to succeed if you're throwing the ball that much every single time.
And the last thing to talk about with the offense, which we haven't yet, and if you're going to throw the ball that many times, well, you better catch it. And the last 2 weeks, especially, they haven't been doing so. The Steelers lead the league in drops, not just the last 2 weeks, but overall in the season by more than 10 drops than the second highest total. Is this something that can be corrected? I mean, we talked about it last week. I certainly didn't expect it to carry over because I thought it was something that they could correct. But, we're talking about back-to-back weeks now where guys just don't seem to hang on to the ball. And you can highlight it as primarily being Deontay Johnson, primarily being Eric Ebron. But, everybody's kind of taking the accountability for it. We've seen Juju drop a couple. We've seen Chase Claypool drop a couple as well. Really, it's James Washington that shouldn't have to shoulder any of this blame because he hasn't dropped any. But this has been an issue for a while now, and it's something that they got to clean up, and they got to clean up quick.
Listen, it's always been an easy thing to say from a guy sitting on the couch, oh, you should catch that ball. And it's easy to tell the guy sitting on the couch that you can't do that. You can't say that. You're not in the NFL. You shouldn't be able to have that power to say that. But I'm not the one making the millions of dollars to catch these balls. And it's one thing if it's one game, but this is like week after week after week that we're seeing these mistakes. And especially from Deontay Johnson and Eric Ebron, I just feel like what is going through their head. I don't know if it's a mental thing or if it's just a physically incapable thing, which I feel like that's definitely not true. We've seen them make these catches. So I have no idea what the issue is. Maybe they just need to hit the jug machine some more, but I feel like I'm at a point where I'm comfortable with saying like, listen, this is your job and we need to rely on you to be able to catch these balls. I mean, it's not Ben's fault that you're not catching these balls. Some of them, sure, but a lot of them are just hitting your hands and going to the ground.
I think what it is, to be quite honest with you, is this offense, because of it being the short to intermediate game, relies so heavily on the yak of these guys, the yards after catch, that these guys know that they got to make a move after catching the ball. And that's the problem. That's why they're dropping them, is because they're trying to make that move before they catch the ball. And I think that that's already in their head is, for a guy like Deontay Johnson, phenomenal after the catch. The problem is you got to make that catch before he can make a move after the catch. But in his head, he's already thinking about what's he going to do once he catches the ball. And that's something that I do think is correctable and I think will happen. With a guy like Eric Ebron, the problem is it's not just this year. We've seen it throughout his career. It's been an issue. And, I still think, we talked about the like boom, the bust, the risk, the reward. I think that the reward for these guys is still tremendously outweighs the risk. So I'm not saying, ice them out of the offense. I know people want to see a lot more of James Washington, and I'm not going to disagree with that, but I don't think it should come at the expense of, losing playing time for a guy like Deontay Johnson, because I know what is in there, and I know what he's going to be capable of doing as his career continues to blossom. So, with guys like that, especially Deontay Johnson, more so than Eric Ebron, I don't think that you go away from him. I don't think that you reduce his playing time. I think that it's just something that you work on in practice and let him know, hey, you can't be making that next move before you have the football.
Yeah, and I mean, I wasn't even thinking about that, but it makes me think maybe they're also expecting to get hit, and that could affect them as well because when you
a lot of this stuff's over the middle of the field.
Yeah, so maybe they're just expecting someone to be there. But when it comes to those guys, you mentioned they are still productive guys, and the difference is if they make these catches. Because going back to this game, Eric Ebron 7 catches, 68 yards. Deontay Johnson 8 catches, 71 yards, and a touchdown. But the difference is they are still making some plays, but if they make all these plays, that is what continues the drives, and that is what continues to keep your offense on the field and let your defense get a break and put yourself in better positions to get these field goals or touchdowns, get in the red zone, anything like that. So whenever you drop these passes, that is the worst way to stall a drive.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And there's nothing that was said there that I can disagree with. The one positive that I'm looking at it, is Ben just continuing to throw to these guys, though. The confidence isn't wavering with him. He knows what these guys are capable of because he practices with them every day. Him and Eric Ebron have a great relationship. Somebody told me, that same person, that their relationship, honestly, off the field is pretty similar to the one that he had with Ryan Switzer. And obviously Eric Ebron does much more on the football field than Ryan Switzer did here. But just off the field, those guys have a phenomenal relationship. And we heard Eric Ebron talk about it. He stayed at Ben's house, in the offseason to work on stuff. So we know the relationship those two guys have. We know Ben is going to continue to go to them. And, so I'll say that's a positive, when your quarterback has that trust in you. And now it's about rewarding that quarterback's trust in you. If those guys continue to mess up, it's going to make Ben look really bad for having that trust. So these guys really got to start making plays for their quarterback.
Yeah. I mean, he still had 305 yards, 2 touchdowns. The
Think
unfortunate
about what he
thing
could have
is
had these last 2 weeks.
exactly. And the unfortunate thing is the pick wasn't even like he made a bad throw. It was another ball that was tipped at the line of scrimmage, and it just went right into John Bostic's hands, which ultimately ended the game.
Yeah, of
Which,
course, it was John Boston.
yeah. And another thing, and I've seen multiple people on Twitter say it, and obviously we've talked about it, that the reason he's getting the balls batted down so much is because these guys are being able to time it up. They get it in a rhythm. But it is amazing that a 6'5" quarterback has so many balls batted all the time.
Yeah, we talked about that before. It's teams knowing that they're not getting to him. You're not here to sack the guy. So, just try to get your hands up in the throwing lanes, and good things are going to happen for you every once in a while, as we saw. And Montez Sweat's a beast, by the way. I mean, that whole Washington front between him, Jonathan Allen, Chase Young, they're so good. That's the strength of that football team. But yeah, that's absolutely the reason it's happening, is because teams know they're not getting to Ben. So they're just going to, try to jump in those passing lanes and do that. I do want to mention we got one more question as well, at least, that came through here. Should they let James Pierre, the undrafted free agent cornerback, have a go? My opinion is yes. See, that would be a pretty tall. He's been phenomenal on special teams this year. I could see him sparingly play a little bit at some point. Yeah, you got to be creative with that, because you don't want to just throw a guy into the fire like that, especially right now. We're talking about a game against Buffalo on Sunday Night Football, where we're now, scratching and clawing, trying to keep this number 1 seed away from the Chiefs. That's a really tough spot to put a guy in, like a guy like James Pierre. But we both talked about it. It was something we talked about on here, how impressive it was for this guy to make the team, joining them so late in training camp. Both him and Ray McLeod carving out spots on this roster without having a preseason. So they definitely like the guy. But I would be weary of putting him in a position where he's on the defense for any defensive snaps. But again, he's been a great player for them on special teams. It will be interesting to see, though. Obviously, being a little bit undermanned there, Joe Hayden's probably not going to go. Even if Steven Nelson does go, is he 100%? So we might get a look at this guy at some point.
Yeah, and if they do, I feel like they shouldn't just throw him into a fire and be like, "Hey, cover this guy man on man." Let there be like some safety help. Yeah, like let there be safety help over the top. Like have Minka like shade to his side of the field if you're gonna have him on the field. Like just don't leave him there on an island on his own.
Absolutely. I think that might be it, to be honest with you. Oh wait, of course, as I said, excuse me, we're gonna start answering questions on here. And we also did you grab a couple bets that you liked?
Yeah, I've got a few.
Okay.
Do you want me to do them right now, or are we going to do it after the questions?
Well, no, yeah. There was one that came through from Sam. Do you think that Bud's injury will result in his price tag diminishing? If so, do you think the Steelers may be able to keep TJ and Dupree for next season as well? So it's something we kind of already talked about, but this was DM to us, so we definitely wanted to talk about it. Again, I think what it comes down to is this guy going to take a 1-year deal, and what's it going to be for? And I don't love the chances of it. My gut would still say no. This guy has played his last snap in Pittsburgh, and unfortunately it happened the way that it happened. But I think that the door is a little bit more open, and it's not even, the injury definitely plays into it a little bit. But again, I'll say it again. It goes back to the financial ramifications of the pandemic on the league as a whole, where teams just aren't going to be shelling out money because there's not a whole lot of revenue going around right now. Obviously, you have the advertising and stuff like that. No ticket sales. No parking sales, no stadium sales, or at least a lack thereof, as opposed to most years previously. So I don't know, man. I really don't see it happening, but the door's a little bit more open. If you want to look at it like that, the chances increased a little bit. It's just not by much.
Yeah, so I would say, not knowing what the contract would be, whether it be 1 year, long term, who knows. I would say before the injury happened, the chances of keeping Bud Dupree were 10% to 90%. Like 10% we keep him, 90% he's leaving. I would say that changed to like 70-30. Like 70% he's still leaving, but 30% we still have him next year. So, like you said, it increased a little bit, but still not enough for me to say, yeah, he's going to be on the team.
Yeah. I as we sit here right now, I don't see it. Hey man, love y'all's podcast. Definitely going to tune into more of these. Got to shout you out on my IG page. Keep up the great work. We see your Instagram page all the time. We follow each other on Twitter. Thank you for the support. We can't thank you enough for that. So absolutely, we would appreciate that. We know the Instagram following that you have, so we would definitely appreciate that if you can drive some of that traffic over to us. So that's
thanks
awesome.
Everybody in the chat so far. Today's been a good day for a lot of chatters in the YouTube chat. So
yeah, I'm getting better at using those things that they call tags on YouTube.
Yeah.
So if people search, they might find us, live streaming talking about the Steelers.
Yeah, so if anybody's listening back, we are on YouTube Live when we record these shows and we tweet it out. So if you want to come hop in the chat, hang out with us, you can talk to us and ask questions. We'll be here the whole time to talk to you.
Yeah, that's a good point. Is because people listening back might be like, "What the heck are these guys talking about with these questions?" Yeah, we do it simultaneously where we're streaming the show on YouTube at youtube.com/c/around the 412, and then we put it out in podcast form. So if you only listen to the podcast, you might be a little confused by what's happening when we say we're answering questions. That's what we're talking about. Is we have the YouTube chat rolling simultaneously as we record. So, but yeah, appreciate everybody that's in here. There was a little bit more interaction than the most episodes, so we can't thank you for that enough. NFL bets, though, real quick. Where you went through, were there some that you liked a little bit more than others, or what are we looking
at? So I wrote down 3 bets for this weekend.
Yeah.
And I will start.
Is it just NFL or?
Yeah, it's just NFL. I will start with the Jets and who do they play? Jets and Seahawks. So they're giving the Seahawks 13.5 points. And I'll be honest, I don't like the Seahawks to cover that because their defense is terrible. And there's no denying that. It is like historically bad. And seeing the way that the terrible Eagles were able to stay in the game with Seattle, honestly, the Jets are terrible, but I don't know if they're 13.5 points terrible against that defense. I think they might be able to score a little bit. So I'm going to take the Jets to cover that 13.5 points.
Wow. Okay. I think people might find that as a little bit of surprise, but
hey, I mean, sometimes you got to take a risk, and it's just a lot of points. I get the Jets are terrible, but looking at the way the Jets played the Raiders, and I know the Raiders are not an amazing team, but they're a decent team. The Jets should have won that game if they didn't tank on the last play. I'm convinced that they definitely said, "Hey, just let them score." But I think they'll cover. So yeah, Jets plus 13.5 against the Seahawks. Second, I'm going with the Raiders money line against the Indianapolis Colts. Again, I said Raiders are a decent team. They're not an amazing team, but they're a decent team. They're playing at home, and the money line is plus 136. I'm just taking them to beat the Colts straight up. The spread on that game is three. So it's predicted to be a relatively close game. I just think the Raiders are going to win outright.
Okay.
And then my last bet is actually our game. It is the Steelers and the Bills, and I'm going to take the under 46.5 points. I know that we saw last week that the Bills put up some points on the 49ers. We've seen the Steelers be able to put up points in the past, not so much recently, but I just think the defenses on both sides and the way this game's going to play out, it's going to be a low-scoring game, like kind of similar to last year, maybe not as low-scoring because our offense is better than last year's game. But I'm thinking like maybe like a 24 to 17 game, or maybe 20 to 14, something like that. Somewhere in the ballpark of there.
Okay. Yeah, so Stubbs, I didn't see your question. I just went through here and I don't see anything from you, but you said hammer James Conner's over if we decide to switch up the offense and we run I form once. Also hammer T. McLaurin's over on receiving yards after being shut down by the Bears. Yeah, that's one thing that we did do well, really, in that game. Terry McLaurin, 2 receptions on 6 targets for 24 yards, I believe, something like that. But so yeah, I also have a few bets here. I will say I have
14 yards.
14 minutes. No idea what James Conner's rushing prop is going to be, or Terry McLaurin's, because I don't see that listed yet on here. So my bets are going to be, I'm taking Tennessee to cover 7.5 against Jacksonville, coming off that embarrassing performance against the Browns. I think that they absolutely give it to the Jaguars this week. I think they win by double digits, so I would take them to cover that. My next one is going to be looking at our game. I got to go with this because the odds are just too good. At plus 124, I'm just taking the Steelers to win this game. Money line. This line has moved a lot from the Steelers being favorites to now being 2.5-point underdogs. So the money line, Steelers money line will get you plus 124. And I really like those odds. And then my last one, Baltimore, Cleveland, Monday night at plus 100. I'll take the Cleveland Browns on the money line. And that might surprise people. Here's the thing. I, to a degree, believe in the Cleveland Browns. I think that they are definitely a playoff team, and I think that they're the second best team in the AFC North. I think that they're better than the Baltimore Ravens.
At this moment, I agree with you.
And I know for a fact, we going back to just last episode, we both said, when healthy, we'll take Baltimore over Cleveland.
Right.
That performance against Tennessee, watching Baker Mayfield do it against an actual football team, granted, Tennessee's defense isn't anything to write home about, but with what they're doing with the play action, running the fifth most play action plays in the NFL now, doing it a lot more over the last few weeks, I'm a believer that Cleveland is a playoff team. But again, I don't necessarily trust them once they get to the playoffs. But I do think they're better than Baltimore. Even in last night's game against Dallas, I didn't see anything from Baltimore to make me believe they're that great of a football team. They might sneak in as the 7th seed, but after this loss to Cleveland that they're going to have on Monday night, they're going to have a lot of work to do in the last couple of weeks. I think Cleveland wins this football game.
Which stinks because it sucks to say as a Steeler fan, but we need to be rooting for the Ravens this game. Because we don't know how the Steelers season is going to pan out, and we're only 2 games ahead of the Browns now. So we definitely need to be rooting for the Ravens. But yeah, I agree with you. The Browns are it's hard for me to say it, but they're like a legit team. First winning season since 2007. So, hats off to them. I can't imagine being a fan of that team and having to watch the team lose that long. Oh wait, yeah, I can. I was a fan of the Pirates. So, so never mind. I actually don't feel that bad. But yeah, I agree with you. I think the Browns will win that game, and without OBJ too. They're doing all this without him.
Mm-hmm. They run the football as good as anybody in the league.
Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt.
I saw the stat because Dallas gave up 294 rushing yards last night to Baltimore. And they also gave up 306 rushing yards when they played Cleveland. That's ridiculous. That's more than the Steelers have run for in the last 5 weeks combined. Just one of those numbers.
That's terrible.
Stubbs is making his picks from the YouTube chat. It looks like he said he's going Dallas minus 3.5 against Cincinnati. Dallas left a lot of points on the board last night. He thinks they get those points that they left on the board on Sunday.
I like it.
I kind of like that too. 3.5. Yeah. Seems reasonable to me. Andy Dalton seems like he's ignited that offense a little bit. Zeke Elliott had a decent game against Baltimore.
I would just like to say that Nick Chubb's long on Sunday was 8 yards more than the Steelers had in the game.
Oh, brother, that's just sad. It's impressive for him, I guess, but it's just sad is it more impressive for him? Is it more sad as a Steelers fan?
Oh, it's sad as a Steelers fan for sure. It was a 29-yard run. We had 21 yards rushing in the game.
Yeah. Oh, so there's Gus Edwards had a longer run than our total rushing yards too. Then just last night, he had a 30-some yard run.
Yeah.
Oh, brother.
I'm sure if you look at all these running backs, there will be multiple that have longer than that.
Okay. Well, it's time for one last time to bring up rocking around the 412. As I said, it's unfortunate that Ryan wasn't able to join us tonight to kind of wrap this up. But as I look around my basement right now, I have gifts for 4 families. And we also haven't shopped for the fifth family yet because Crowworthy is just making their donation tonight, which was why Ryan was going to be coming on to talk about it, wrap up, make the donation, yada, yada, yada. Well, that part couldn't happen, but they're still making the donation. So Crowworthy is donating $1,000 to our cause. If you guys haven't seen, which is unbelievable. It's the largest single donation that we've received in the 3 years of doing this. And like I said, I'm looking right now at 4 families worth of toys and clothes and arts and craft supplies, and we got 4 Nintendo Switches down here. And so I'm not gonna put out my address because I know what will happen if I do that with our listeners.
Yeah, remember when you had that stereo get stolen off your deck or whatever?
Yeah, exactly. Somebody's just show up with the black Air Force Ones, and I'm gonna be in trouble. But anyway, all jokes aside, we can't thank you guys enough for making this happen. This has been obviously the best year that we've had, and to make it happen, from your guys' perspective during a pandemic, and when a lot of people are in a financial crisis themselves, to rally together and be able to pull through and be able to provide 5 families with a Christmas that they otherwise would not be having is absolutely unbelievable, and just a testament to you guys to have over 60 people donate their hard-earned money to this cause. And I promise you guys that it's well worth it. I mean, you guys will see pictures and videos in the coming weeks leading up to Christmas of where this money is going to. And we couldn't be more excited to make it happen because we find these people. We know firsthand the situations that these people are in, just because we know those people. So again, we're super excited to make this happen, and we wouldn't be able to do it obviously without you guys. Every single penny that you guys donate is going to these families, and then the prizes that you can win for doing so are coming out of our pockets, including Donnie Druins, who's not here with us right now. But and also one prize, I will give a shout out to Josh Romesberg. He donated a James Conner jersey to be part of the prizes as well. So 13 total prizes. We have right around 60 people who have donated. And then if you donate at least $20, you're going to be eligible to win one of those prizes. So those are as good of odds as I feel like you can find anywhere. What is it? What's the math on that? 13 divided by 60. What's each person's chance of winning a prize here? If we can do the math real quick.
Listen, we obviously are not smart enough for that. So we're pulling out the calculator. A little over 21.5% chance.
Yeah, see, so you got better than a 1 in 5 chance of winning a prize if you get involved with this. And the prizes include that James Conner jersey I just mentioned, a Juju Smith-Schuster signed football, Minka Fitzpatrick signed jersey, Jack Ham signed pylon, Chase Claypool autographed photo from his first touchdown, Benny Snell autographed photo, Joe Musgrove baseballs, Brian Russ puck, Kevin Newman jersey. Donnie's going to buy somebody one of our hoodies from the merch store.
Which are very nice, by the way.
I think that might be it. Yeah, we should have worn them so I could show everybody how nice it was. But that's neither here nor there. Again, I don't know that you guys need a reward for doing so, but there will be a reward for 21.6% of you. So
yeah, it is crazy to think. I mean, last year we did 3 families, and obviously we thought that was a lot, especially when we were trying to buy makeup. It seemed like a lot at the time. But this year we're being able to expand that to 5 families, and hopefully it just continues to grow from here.
And it's 5 families. It's also more money being put towards each family.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, it's awesome to see for the first year we've done this to now. I mean, the donations have increased immensely. What we've been able to do for the families has increased. And that's all thanks to you guys. So from the bottom of our hearts, thank you for donating to this cause, and it means a lot.
So I don't know. We could probably just talk about this amongst ourselves when we jump off of here, but I know that I will be here on Saturday. Will you be available Saturday because that's what we're going to do. Okay. All right. So yeah, we will both be back on Saturday, and that's when we will announce the winners of these prizes. It's going to be very old school, if you will. Literally going to have people's names written on pieces of paper. I'm going to grab a hat and around the 412 hat and shake them up in here. And we're going to pick names out of a hat. We're going to do it the old school way. So yeah, very excited to do that on Saturday. So definitely be tuning in. Not sure what time. We'll put that out again. We have to talk amongst ourselves about that. But yeah, from year 1 to where we're at now, it's been crazy. Obviously the mission has changed a little bit, but it's still, the grassroots of what we're doing kind of remain the same. We're just making Christmas happen for people that otherwise wouldn't have it happen. So again, as Tyler said, from the bottom of our hearts, we can't thank you enough Got to give a big shout out to one of the most generous donators, obviously Jeff Hartley. It's his birthday today as well, so happy birthday shout out to Jeff. And got to give a shout out to another person, our sponsor, who was a big donator as well, and that's Christian Keek Circle. So Keek's Barbershop is an old-fashioned barbershop. It's located at 180 Brighton Avenue in Rochester, PA. He's open 11 to 7, Tuesday through Friday, and 9 to 4 on Saturday. Every Tuesday, he does $5 off for military personnel, first responders, and nurses. Again, that's Keek's Barbershop at 180 Brighton Avenue in Rochester, PA.
Nice shirt, by the way. For those on the YouTube, and you'll be able to see a Keek's Barbershop shirt.
Very true. I think that's about it, though. So the next time we see you guys, we will be giving away the prizes for rocking around the 412. And probably not too long after that, we're going to start kicking off the 2021 mission. So I know that last year we got a donation literally the day that we stopped doing the previous year. So, and big shout out to Mike in Illinois for that one. So, thanks everybody for being a part of it. Thank you for your participation, and thank you in advance for anybody that gets involved from here. Okay, Stubbs. Yeah. Shout out to you too. You donated. We get it. I was trying to find a way to tie in given Christian's sponsorship read. So, but thanks for listening to Around the 412. This has been a presentation of Crowworthy, where winners are serving winners coast to coast with sports, gambling, fantasy, and more. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Around the 412. Follow them at Crowworthy. Visit the Pittsburgh City page at crowworthy.com for podcasts like this one, blogs like I'm about to start writing for them, and more. Until next time.